student population, and maybe their students the one exciting thing is they felt so comfortable with how we're doing, they gave us an extra year of training. So instead of having to reaccredit in 2021, new accreditation will be in 2020. 1 year. I wanted to run through a couple of things. There are several things that we've done that are moving us forward with our accreditation, just so you kind of know, we're not sitting back waiting for that kind of if anything's happening. The first one is we've assigned a faculty member to be our HSC. That's vital that we have. It should not be directed to the administrator. It should be directed to the faculty member. Alicia Foster has been on that role. With her and I expect she's her time as a math instructor is reduced in the class. The second thing we've done is implement an enhanced student complaint process. Complaint processes with HSC is rolling out federally, in common field. And what we're talking about is we've been doing this, we've been tracking. What this does is enhances it and forward it into the complaint. And it doesn't be a complaint, it could be a concern, it could be a suggestion. But it provides an easy way to do that. They can do it anonymously, or they can do it The more important thing is it provides us with a location where we state what exactly we did, how long it took us to resolve this, what the final outcome was, and then we told the student. Because when we talk to accreditation, where they can give that information as far as resolve all of it. Rather than we did what the student wanted necessarily, but we resolve the issues and how long did it take, what was the date. What's interesting is I haven't officially sent that out to students, but I did have IT put it in their SNAP, and students found it, and it's already given us our first incident. The whole idea is improvement, and so we're looking for ways we can improve what we do. The other thing we've been doing is, as you have seen in the media, sexual misconduct. We have policies we are required by federal law to make sure students are aware of services as well as processes. We do that every fall. We send them out a flyer that talks about it through email, and we tell them about the important. We also next week actually have a group meeting with students to give them some more. The newest thing we're doing is we have partnered with Get Inclusive for bystanders. Bystander training is also a requirement. We need to make sure our employees know what they want to do, if I think they've been, or it could have been sexual misconduct, how do I help somebody in a situation like that. We also need to work with students. So the Get Inclusive software is a training package. Students do it one-on-one, employees will do it on their own time. And when you do about 40 minutes for a student to do it, I think it's going to take about an hour to maybe 70 minutes for an employee to do it. But the point is, it gives them that information. It is interactive, so there's sometimes where they have to answer questions to prove that they've actually gone through the training. So we will track that, and we will be requiring that all employees complete the training. We won't require all students, but we are using it as an assignment in some of their classes, so then they can get a grade for it for doing it. It's actually pretty decent. I went through both of them, did the training. They're actually pretty well done, and so I'm hoping people will find them helpful. We are also starting a quality improvement program. This was piloted in FY18. We're having a full implementation this year, and basically that's a way for us to look at programs more in depth. and figure out how can we help that program improve. So we're looking at everything from enrollments to retention to employer surveys, student satisfaction surveys, any data we have, plus anything they're seeing in their curriculum, and then we'll work on ways that they can improve what they're doing. And so we have a group of programs this year that we will go through and we will work with them, and that comes from the academic side. The academic excellence team has put a great process together for that. We've talked about this before, and I won't mention much about it, but we are still on track for strategic planning online for both our planning processes and our assessment processes, and so we are expecting those will continue to be implemented throughout this year. And that's what I have for you. So any questions for me?
Questions for Tracy?
I don't think so.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Good update.
May I have a motion to acknowledge the report, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. And Rich is in the dark.
Usually I start with a little levity, but there's so much material here, I don't really know where to begin. So, in fact, when we walked in, Jamie Nold said, "If you think it's cool, you should have been in here an hour and a half ago when it was really warm in this room." And I said, "Well, just wait, we're going to really light it up." So much for my predictive skills. Can you? If you
No,
can
we can't see.
You can't see it. Okay, so.
But we have our computers.
Okay. Well, this may result in a abbreviated presentation when I can't actually point to numbers on a page, but did want to talk briefly about FY18 and a financial wrap-up. Usually we do it in September, and I was unavailable, so just kind of want to get to it at this point. What's presented in the financials, that's the post-secondary fund summary that you typically see, and I've modified it just a little bit to illustrate a couple points, if we could see it. But this is the financial statements as they stand as we hand the documents off to the auditors to conduct their audit and do their review. So we'll get the report on out how close we were to what we thought we were in January sometime. But one of the things I wanted to talk about in FY18, as we adopted that budget, it was a balanced budget. We had predicted that revenues would equal what our expenditures were. Well, throughout the course of the year, things happen and we make some changes, and there's some actions that were brought before this board. So if you were to look at that left-hand column on the FY18 revised budget, it really demonstrates what actions were taken by this board during the year. So it was a combination of some supplements with some unanticipated revenue, but there was also some planned spend down of our existing cash reserves or fund balance. And throughout that process, when you aggregate those actions taken during the year, we were really looking at spending into the fund balance for FY18 in the amount of $620,000. And those two items related to the fund balance expenditures were a cash transfer to the food service fund, which this board acted on, and then it was the approval of the expenditure out of the reserves for the capital campaign that's ongoing and underway. So at the end of the day, you think about, we started FY18 going in with a balanced budget. We made these adjustments and corrections and things that happened, and we're looking to spend into that reserve by $620. The right-hand column, short of the variances, but when we look at FY18 actual, what we actually did was we spent into that $211,000. So there's a little bit of an improvement over what we anticipated we would thought we were going to do at a $620,000 use, actually came in at $211,000. So there's some other things behind the scenes to that. There's a little bit more to the story as we kind of walk through some of these things. But as we look at our revenues, and we've talked about the enrollment being up in FY18 over FY17, you know, clearly that was reflected in some of our unanticipated revenue. Student fees and tuition were up, and then also the corporate ed pieces that we were doing. Corporate ed, I just missed the budget amount, so there's quite a favorable variance there. The tuition and fees was really related to the increase in enrollments. When you look at our other local revenue sources, there's a positive variance there, but a lot of that is related to literally lighting things up out on campus with a couple fires, and the insurance proceeds that came from that. So that comes in as other local sources of revenue. So you're going to, obviously you don't anticipate insurance proceeds when you develop a budget. So you're going to see some favorable variances related to that. State revenue, state aid was up. That's a calculation. That's kind of a crystal ball type of thing. When we prepare the FY18 budget, state aid came in a little bit better than what we anticipated. Our other state revenue was pretty much right on track. Federal revenues, again, right on track with what we anticipated we were going to do. And then there was some sale of assets through surplus property sale. So overall, our revenue sources were $905,000 more than what we anticipated with an adopted budget. The revised budget includes a supplement because of some of those unanticipated revenues. When we look at the expenditure side of it, and kind of like my household, we got some additional revenue, but we managed to spend more than what we brought in. But that was planned. That was planned as part of an existing drawdown of the reserves. When we look at our regular salaries, a lot of movement, a lot of adjustments in between the various categories, but overall, just a $56,000 variance. When you look at those adjustments, some of it comes from vacancies, some comes from reclassification. So one thing stands out, to see a big favorable variance in clerical, but there were some adjustments made to reclassify people from clerical status into an employment contract. So we're going to create that variance there, which you would think would create an offset unfavorable in employment contracts, but that wound up being about right. And that has to do with some variances and timing differences that go through. Instruction was up a little bit. When you look at teachers' compensation, a lot of that is tied to overload pay. Again, something that you don't necessarily anticipate, don't necessarily budget for, but it's really reflective of enrollments and students in classes that we're going to incur some overload costs related to that. Hourly pay, when we get into the teacher substitutes, relatively minor. Hourly pay, this is all the part-time, hiring students, hiring part-time people to do work for us. A little bit of an unfavorable variance there, but overall in our overall wage scheme, not that huge of an amount. Early retirement, again, that's kind of a crystal ball type of thing, trying to project where we're at, so a little bit of variance there. But overall, when you look at those wage categories, the 1,000 category, we were $124,000 over the original budget. So when I speak to the variances, I'm really speaking back to what was adopted. That's kind of the measurement of how we proceeded throughout the year. Benefits categories, when we look at the retirement, some of that favorable variance in there just has to do with the calculation method. So when we look at the South Dakota retirement, the SDRS pension, our adjunct instruction, if they're an on-staff one, they are eligible for that SDRS benefit. The non-staff instructors, ones from outside, are not. No real way to measure that, so I take the 6%. That's our match as an employer and apply that to the entire adjunct budget. So we're always going to wind up creating a little bit of a variance there, but it's usually not a huge dollar amount. When we look at the FICA, that's a calculation methodology too, and I think I talked about that a little bit when we adopted the FY19 budget, and I changed that in 19. There's a lot of pre-tax benefits that come out in terms of health insurances, of which that 7.65%, the FICA is not applicable to. FY18, I applied the 7.65 across the board to all wages. So again, we're going to create a little bit of variance there. When we look at our insurance benefits, there's a big variance in health insurance, but that's related to turnovers. New people come on, and either not taking it or are taking it. And again, crystal ball, trying to estimate where we think we're going to be. So overall, our benefits had a favorable variance. So if you net our cost of delivery of services in terms of staffing, we're actually a favorable variance when you look at the wage component of it and the benefits component. We're about $100,000 to the good between those two aspects. You get into the purchase services, that's all the 3,000 categories in our account structure. The main variance, most of it's tied into the professional services aspect of it, that 3190. And we've talked about those things. One's a capital campaign. Two was the stay mats work that was done, a contract that we implemented and talked about. And then the third was some admissions consulting with Russ Krieger, kind of some carryover into FY18. So most of it's in that category. Few things and some travel, but nothing major across the rest of them here. So overall, $400,000+ unfavorable variance, but again, it's all tied up in those professional services and things that you're aware of and we acted on as we proceeded throughout the year. Next category that we have are supplies and materials. Again, that's kind of all over the board across the different categories. Classroom supplies, there was a couple budgets I just missed. I had the wrong dollar amounts in there in the RN and LPN program, so it was going to create an unfavorable variance as a result of that. Some different things in, I'm just trying to read my notes here, which are really small, especially in the dark. Software, there was some unfavorable variance related to that, a couple pieces to it. One in the laptop programs, some additional softwares and programs that we're providing for students. The other piece of it flows into some of the software that was needed for our printing solution. We used to record all that under printing, which was in the services under 3610, but with the new contract that we implemented this year, we're able to break that out. So we're showing equipment rental, we're showing the software components of it to get that printing solution up and running for us, and then also the cost of the printing too. So that created some of those variances in between there. Food, a little bit of an unfavorable variance there, but a lot more AAR events, a lot more Jumpstart events, inviting students to campus, sector breakfasts. So not unusual to expect us to go over in that category as well. In the next category is kind of the other, the miscellaneous, the dues and fees, the various services. That transfer to the food service fund is going to be a large part of the unfavorable variance there. That was $270,000 out of the 400 and some costs that we experienced related to that variance. Some of it's in CNA testing fees. Credit card and bank fees were higher than what was anticipated and projected. So overall, unfavorable variance there, but a lot of it's related to that cash influx of taking it out of the post-secondary fund and moving it over into the food service fund. Bad debt was a little higher than we projected to. That's something where you kind of look backwards and see if you can crystal ball where you're going with it and project where that's at, and so we missed that projection. So our bad debt was a little higher than we anticipated as well. And then the final category falls into the capital, and this is where I kind of want to circle back around to that differential between the 620 that we thought we were going to dip into fund balance and the 211 that we actually did. So when you look at the capital expenditures in terms of infrastructure building improvements, it's pretty much right on, but what we thought we were going to spend it on, we didn't spend it on. So there's actually a project that we held during the year. We'll probably look to carry that over. We'll start to develop and have some discussions about what that's going to look like. So that's roughly a $280,000 project. So if you're looking at how we look at it from a financial statement standpoint, we would look to reserve that 280. In the way we present them, we don't do that, but in effect, we want to carry over that $280,000. So we get a little closer to what we thought we were going to do with that 620. So if you take that 280 and add it to the 211. Now we're right at about 500,000. But again, still favorable from where we thought we were going to be with all the adjustments that we made during the year. Equipment, there was a supplement for GOAD, so we way overexpended when you look at the original budget, but that grant always comes later after the budget's adopted, and we always bring it through as a supplement. So, overall, when you go back to the original budget, expenditures exceeded what we had originally planned by about $1.1 million, but there was $900,000 in revenue to cover that, and again, $600,000 commitment out of our fund balance to cover that. So overall, from my own assessment, pretty close at the end of the day. There's always movement within these various categories. Nothing ever lines up. If it did, you'd question how I got it to be that way. But overall, I think we came out pretty favorably. Took a lot of that additional revenue, invested it into the future, so hopefully we'll start to see some payback for those types of things. So, in a nutshell, that is where we're at on the post-secondary fund.
Okay. Thank you, Rich. Questions for Rich? Nope, no questions. Well, can I have a motion to acknowledge the report?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Good work.
Yep.
You got close, that's good. You didn't operate in the dark the whole year.
No, I
No,
didn't.
that's good. That's good.
Sometimes it's better to look at it in the dark, keeps the blood pressure down.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. No other discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. And President Griggs.
Yeah, good afternoon, President Albert E. and other board members. Thank you again for the opportunity to visit with you. I want to thank Rich as well. I've been at the institution 2 years now, and I don't think there's any one person at Southeast Tech that works more hours, that works harder in terms of, and certainly does a great job keeping us fiscally on track. And it takes some degree of stress away from a number of us to know that Rich's guidance is there in terms of, yes, we can invest in this, or no, we better think twice about that. And so I just want to recognize him and thank him again for all of the work he does all year long. We had a great year, but I think it was a more challenging year than my first year because we had additional revenue. And as Rich mentioned, we invested much of that to better position the institution, going forward. And we hope to capitalize on that this coming year and future years as well. But I also wanted to say a couple quick thank yous because September was a very busy month for us. In the middle of the month, I think on September 13th, we had our first ever capital campaign, the news conference. It was a great event. Some of you were able to be there, and we appreciate that. But I also wanted to thank all of you for, if you go back prior, you remember you all voted in favor of us allowing the investment in NCDS and to help us with the campaign, and we appreciate that investment. It certainly is paying off while we have a ways to go. At the news conference, it was announced by Shelley Unruh, our foundation director, who's doing a great job, along with David Long from Sanford and Tom Kelly from Gage Brothers, that are co-chairing the campaign, that we are about halfway, 3.1 million into our 6.2 million goal. And it's a fairly aggressive goal, and it includes the Vet Tech project. So we still have to roll up the sleeves and hit it hard. And today was another very good day. I spoke with Shelley, and we had a $35,000 gift from one of the companies in town, Sands Drywall, and they also committed to help us with a new construction technology program that we hopefully will bring forward next year with a steel building to work on different construction or commercial construction aspects to that building. So that's all very exciting. The gift prior to that was a first-time gift as well by the Sioux Falls City Council, a $100,000 gift and an 8-0 vote, which I thought was pretty darn impressive. And there were a couple of meetings with the council that set the stage for that vote. And at each of those meetings, I think we had 16 different sponsor industry and business partners and sponsors that were there. So I think we were well represented, not only with Southeast Tech staff, but even more importantly, business and industry from Sioux Falls. And then on the 13th, the big event was the 50th celebration. We had an auto show, a concert, we had food trucks. I think the best estimates were somewhere between 800 to 1,000 different individuals that were coming and going, students, faculty, staff, alums, former employees. So it was a great night. We also had that evening an event that was organized by Trudy Scheer and Jeff Schlepp. Trudy is a former employee of Southeast Tech, had been at Southeast Tech for over 30 years and had a lot of contacts of former employees, and with her help and with Jeff's help, Jeff also a faculty member that's been at Southeast for over 30 years, they hosted an event at the Ramkota that evening. We had over 100 retirees, attend that event, which I thought made it very special. Was they talked about, they had a representative from each of the decades that Southeast Tech has been in operation. So it was again, a really fun event, but one that I wish we would have recorded it, honestly, because there was a lot of pride in the room in terms of where we started, the challenges we've overcame, and where we are today, and hopefully our promise to continue that, going forward. So a lot of work went into that 50th celebration. We had 80 volunteers from the campus community that were there that evening, and it went very, very well, very smoothly. But within those 80 volunteers, we had a smaller group, the planning committee, that I also wanted to recognize, just to say thank you to them as well. And it was, they were meeting all summer planning the event. Margaret Pennock, Shelley Unruh, Vicki Oswald, Jackie Kramer, Stephanie Entringer, Jeff Schlepp, Brandy Olson, Chelsea Reich, and Trudy Scheer, who has retired and came back again to help us with all of that. So it was a wonderful event throughout the whole day. The next week I thought was even better in terms of we had continued our 50th anniversary celebration with the New Day in Tech Ed event that was held in the afternoon at Southeast. And of course, Mike Rowe was the speaker that Premier Bank brought in, and we're so thankful for their willingness to help us with that event. We had over 500. The theater was packed. There was well over 500 in the theater. Daktronics set up a large screen in the Great Hall so that the overflow could watch Mike Rowe and listen in on the event. And so, again, everybody that came really enjoyed his message of, work hard and smart and workforce development. So that was great. Last week, to kind of end the month, we had our first meeting with the executive director of the South Dakota Board of Regents, the new director, Dr. Paul Barant, and we had some great discussion. Dr. Valdez and I spent some time getting to know him, and we laid out some ideas in terms of collaboration, not just with the state universities, but maybe even more importantly with the university center, and some next steps there in building that relationship. And to end on a high note, we received some news that we were successful in one of our recent grant applications where we partnered with the Sioux Falls School District, and that I can't get into the specifics of the grant at this time. The sponsoring organization has embargoed all of that. They want to release the information, and I'm just excited to say that's going to provide, I think, potential for even greater integration between Southeast Tech, CTE, and the Sioux Falls School District, which of course is all about building pathways and more options for students, I think, which is great for everyone. And October looks to be an equally busy month because we are going to be bringing several new program proposals forward. So we'll be anxious the next time we visit to be talking with you about some of these new program proposals that are the direct result of months and months of conversation with local business and industry. So they have stepped up, and now it's our turn to respond and to also step up and hopefully get more direction going forward from them, but to launch some new programs and initiatives that will even build stronger enrollment going forward and stronger relationships in the region. So, thank you very much for your time. I just thought we had a few minutes, so I was going to speak here for a minute or two. So, thank you for indulging me. Thank you.
Thanks for
Thank
the
you, Bob.
update.
Any other business to come before the board? If not, couldn't I have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
We are adjourned.